A quiet park and a storm brewing. The local park was serene that morning, bathed in the soft glow of the early sun. Birds chirped in lively chorus, their melodies weaving seamlessly with the distant laughter of children on the playground. A gentle breeze danced through the trees, rustling the leaves like whispers in a quiet conversation. Families picnicked on the grass, couples strolled hand in hand along the winding paths, and joggers moved in rhythmic strides, lost in their own worlds. Among them was a young girl named Alaya. Her radiant smile lit up the space around her as she wheeled her chair to a shaded spot under a large oak tree. Alaya loved this park. It was her haven. Here, she didn't have to think about the surgeries she had endured or the challenges she faced every day. Her wheelchair, painted a vibrant purple with stickers of butterflies and stars, was a reflection of her lively spirit. Her father, Marcus, sat a few feet away on a bench, sipping from a travel mug of coffee. He watched her with a protective, loving gaze. For Marcus, every moment spent with Alaya was a treasure. Despite the struggles they had endured together, her laughter was the melody that kept him going. Alaya's hands adjusted the scarf around her neck, a gift from her grandmother. The scarf was a burst of colors, much like her personality, bright, bold, and impossible to ignore. As she tied it neatly, her eyes sparkled with joy at the sight of the children playing tag nearby. She loved the energy and freedom in their movements, even if she couldn't join in the same way. For her, life was about finding joy in what she could do, not dwelling on what she couldn't. However, this peaceful morning would soon take a sharp, jarring turn. At the edge of the park, a man in his late 30s strode purposefully down the path. His expression was sour, his jaw tight, and his eyes darted around with barely veiled irritation. His name was Ethan. Life had been hard on him, but instead of confronting his pain, he wore it like armor, deflecting his frustrations onto the world. Today, he felt particularly agitated, every laugh and smile around him seeming like a personal affront. Ethan's eyes fell on Alaya, her wheelchair gleaming in the sunlight. Something about her contentment irritated him. To him, her presence felt like a reminder of everything unfair in life, a visible symbol of weakness, or so he thought. His steps slowed as his anger bubbled to the surface, fueled by a need to assert himself over someone. Alaya was oblivious to the approaching storm. She was engrossed in watching a squirrel darting up a tree, her soft giggles a testament to her simple joys. Marcus, however, noticed Ethan immediately. Years of being a single parent and enduring the quiet prejudices of others had honed his instincts. He could sense trouble from a mile away, and right now, his instincts were screaming. Ethan stopped a few feet away from Alaya, his gaze fixed on her like a predator sizing up prey. His lips curled into a sneer as he crossed his arms and stood there, unmoving. The air grew tense. Marcus stood from his bench, his coffee forgotten. He didn't rush to intervene, not yet. He wanted to gauge the situation first, though his muscles tensed like a coiled spring. "Hey!" Ethan barked, his voice cutting through the tranquil morning. Alaya looked up, startled. "What are you doing here?" Alaya blinked, confused. "I'm just enjoying the park," she replied softly, her voice filled with innocence. Ethan took a step closer, his scowl deepening. "This park is for people who belong here. You think you're special, sitting there like that, taking up space." Alaya's smile faltered. She tightened her grip on the armrests of her wheelchair, unsure how to respond. Marcus, now alert, began walking toward them. "What's wrong?" Alaya asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm not bothering anyone." Ethan's sneer turned into a mocking grin. "Bothering? People like you just take and take. What do you even contribute, huh? Sitting there, waiting for someone to feel sorry for you." Tears pricked Alaya's eyes, but she held her ground, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing her cry. You're just a burden," Ethan interrupted harshly. His voice was loud now, drawing the attention of nearby passersby. Some slowed their steps, unsure of what was happening. Others pretended not to notice, too uncomfortable to intervene. Marcus was closer now, his face a mask of calm that hid the storm brewing inside. He heard every word, and it took all his restraint not to act immediately. Instead, he observed, his sharp eyes calculating Ethan's every move. "You don't even belong here," Ethan continued, his voice laced with venom. "Parks are for real people, not." "That's enough," Marcus said, his deep voice cutting through the air like a knife. Ethan turned sharply, startled by the interruption. Marcus stood tall, his imposing figure casting a long shadow over Ethan. His calm demeanor only made his presence more intimidating. "And who are you?" Ethan sneered, though his bravado wavered slightly. "I'm her father," Marcus replied evenly. "And I suggest you walk away." Ethan laughed, a hollow, mocking sound. "Her father, huh? Well, maybe you should teach her where she belongs. People like her, people like you, don't get to tell me what to do." Marcus took a step closer, his gaze unwavering. The crowd around them grew, whispers spreading like wildfire. Some people pulled out their phones, ready to record. Others stood frozen, unsure of how to react. "You've said enough," Marcus said, his voice steady but firm. "You don't know her. You don't know what she's been through. But I promise you this, you will not hurt her." Ethan's grin faltered. He was used to intimidating people with his aggression, but Marcus wasn't backing down. For the first time, a flicker of doubt crossed his face. "Is that a threat?" Ethan asked, trying to sound bold but failing to mask the quiver in his voice. "It's a promise," Marcus said, his tone unyielding. The tension in the air was palpable. Elia looked up at her father, her tears now replaced by a flicker of hope. She knew he wouldn't let her face this alone. The scene was set for a confrontation that would change everything, not just for Ethan, but for everyone who watched. The standoff. The park had transformed. What once was a peaceful haven now felt like the center of a brewing storm. The sunlight seemed harsher, the bird songs eerily quiet. A circle of bystanders formed at a distance, their hushed murmurs filling the void left by the tension between Marcus and Ethan. Phones were held aloft, their tiny cameras capturing every detail, yet no one dared to step forward. Ethan's bravado faltered as Marcus took another step closer. Marcus was calm, unnervingly so, his broad shoulders squared, his eyes locked on Ethan. Years of facing adversity, of standing strong for his daughter, had prepared him for this moment. His presence was like a boulder amidst a rushing tide, unmoving, unyielding. Ethan, however, couldn't admit that he felt the crack in his confidence. To back down now, in front of an audience, was unthinkable. He puffed out his chest, attempting to reclaim the dominance he felt slipping through his fingers. "You think you're some kind of hero?" Ethan sneered, his voice loud enough to echo. "Standing up for someone who can't even stand for themselves." Marcus's expression didn't change. His voice, steady and deliberate, cut through the air like a blade. "You think strength is about tearing others down, that it makes you powerful to attack a child. You're wrong." Elia watched the exchange from the ground, her chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. Her wheelchair, now a shattered heap of metal and plastic, lay beside her. For a moment, she felt helpless, vulnerable, but then she looked at her father. His presence was a shield, a reminder that she wasn't alone. "Wrong." Ethan spat, taking a defiant step closer. "You think you can tell me what's right and wrong? You're nothing. Just like her. Just another." Before Ethan could finish his sentence, Marcus raised a hand, not in violence, but in a commanding gesture that made Ethan stop mid-word. The intensity in Marcus's eyes silenced him more effectively than any shout ever could. "Enough," Marcus said, his voice low but firm. "This isn't about her. It's about you. Whatever anger you're carrying, whatever bitterness is eating you alive, it has nothing to do with my daughter. She's done nothing to you." Ethan hesitated, his fists clenching and unclenching at his sides. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by someone who didn't meet him with equal aggression. Marcus's calm demeanor was unnerving, like standing in the eye of a hurricane. "She doesn't belong here," Ethan finally muttered, his voice quieter now, but still dripping with venom. "People like her just." "People like her," Marcus interrupted, stepping closer until there was only a foot of space between them, "are stronger than you'll ever be. Do you know what it takes to wake up every day and face a world that's not built for you? To endure the stares, the whispers, the obstacles. She does it with a smile. And you're threatened by that." Ethan took a step back, his confidence shrinking with each word. The crowd, once hesitant, began to shift. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the onlookers. Some lowered their phones, their expressions softening as they realized the gravity of the situation. "She's not weak," Marcus continued, his voice rising slightly. "But you are. Weak enough to think you can build yourself up by tearing her down. Weak enough to think that this," he gestured to the broken wheelchair, "makes you strong." The words hit Ethan like a series of blows. He opened his mouth to retort, but no words came out. For the first time, he looked around, really looked. The faces in the crowd weren't cheering him on. They were filled with disapproval, even disgust. The realization was a bitter pill to swallow. "You don't know anything about me," Ethan muttered, his voice barely audible now. "You don't know what I've been through." Marcus's expression softened slightly, but his stance remained firm. "You're right. I don't, and I won't pretend to. But I do know this. Whatever you've been through doesn't give you the right to hurt others. Especially not a child." The crowd grew bolder. A woman stepped forward, her voice trembling but resolute. "He's right. What you did was cruel. She's just a little girl." Ethan glared at her, but his words died on his lips. More voices joined hers, tentative at first, but growing stronger. "She didn't deserve that. Leave them alone. What kind of person picks on a kid?" Ethan's shoulders sagged under the weight of their judgment. He took another step back, his earlier aggression evaporating like morning mist. But Marcus wasn't finished. "You owe her an apology," Marcus said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Ethan's head snapped up, his face flushing with a mix of anger and humiliation. "I don't owe her anything," he snapped, though his voice lacked its earlier conviction. "You do," Marcus countered, his gaze unwavering. "You don't have to like her. You don't even have to understand her. But you will respect her. And you will apologize." The silence that followed was deafening. The crowd watched, their collective breath held as they waited for Ethan's response. Aliyah, still on the ground, looked up at her father with wide eyes. For the first time since the confrontation began, a flicker of hope warmed her chest. Ethan's jaw tightened. He glanced around, his gaze darting from face to face, searching for an escape. But there was none. The weight of the crowd's judgment, combined with Marcus's unrelenting presence, left him cornered. Finally, he muttered something under his breath. "Louder," Marcus demanded, his voice a quiet thunder. "I'm sorry," Ethan said, louder this time, though his tone was devoid of sincerity. His eyes avoided Aliyah's, fixed instead on the ground. Marcus didn't move. "Look at her," he said. "Say it to her face." Ethan hesitated, but the crowd's murmurs grew louder, their disapproval palpable. With visible effort, he turned to Aliyah. His face twisted with reluctance, but he finally spoke. "I'm sorry," he said, the words forced and brittle. Aliyah stared at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, to everyone's surprise, she nodded. "I forgive you," she said quietly, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Ethan blinked, as if the words had struck him harder than any reprimand. He took another step back, then another, before turning and walking away. The crowd parted to let him through, their eyes following him until he disappeared from view. Marcus knelt beside Aliyah, his hands gentle as he helped her back into the remains of her wheelchair. "You okay, sweetheart?" he asked, his voice soft now, filled with concern. She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I am now." The crowd began to disperse, their whispers lingering in the air like an echo. Some approached Marcus and Elia, offering words of support, while others simply left, their thoughts heavy with what they had witnessed. As Marcus wheeled Elia toward the park's exit, the sun broke through the clouds, casting a warm light over them. Elia looked up at her father, her heart swelling with gratitude. He had stood up for her, not just as a protector, but as a reminder that she was worth standing up for. And for the first time that day, she felt stronger than ever. The ripple effect. The park was quiet again, but the air still crackled with the tension that had just passed. The crowd dispersed, though the encounter left an indelible mark on everyone who witnessed it. Conversations hummed in the background as Marcus gently lifted Elia into the car, placing the remnants of her wheelchair in the trunk with careful hands. His face, though calm, held a storm of emotions beneath its surface. Elia watched him silently, her small hands clutching the edge of her seat. She was used to her father being her protector, her anchor, but today he seemed different. Stronger, fiercer, yet quieter, as though the weight of the day had shifted something in him. "Daddy," she finally said, her voice small but steady. Marcus turned to her, his features softening immediately. "Yes, sweetheart." "Are you mad?" she asked, her dark eyes searching his face. He paused, his large hands gripping the steering wheel as he considered his words. "Not at you, Elia. Never at you." He exhaled, his shoulders sagging slightly. "I'm mad at the world sometimes. At people who think they have the right to hurt others. At myself for not stepping in sooner." Elia reached over, placing her hand on his. Her touch was small, but it carried a weight that grounded him. "You didn't do anything wrong, Daddy. You helped me. You always help me." Her words eased some of the tension coiling in his chest, but they didn't erase it entirely. As they drove home, the silence between them was not uncomfortable. It was reflective, filled with unspoken thoughts and unasked questions. Later that evening, Marcus sat at the dining table, staring at the shattered remains of Elia's wheelchair. It was more than a piece of equipment to her. It was her independence, her freedom. Seeing it broken felt like seeing a piece of her shattered. Elia was in her room, humming softly as she worked on a drawing. She often turned to art when she needed to process her feelings, her crayons and pencils offering her a world where she had control. Her latest creation was a vibrant scene of her and her father, standing together like superheroes against a stormy backdrop. The wheelchair, prominently drawn in her signature purple, was untouched by the chaos around them. As Marcus examined the broken pieces, his phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at the screen, his brow furrowing at the unfamiliar number. Hesitating for a moment, he answered. "Hello, Mr. Walker," a woman's voice said. "This is Kelly. I was at the park earlier today." Marcus straightened in his chair, his instincts immediately alert. "Yes. First of all, I wanted to say I'm sorry. For what happened. I saw everything, and I should have done something, but I didn't." I froze. Marcus softened slightly. "It's not your fault. Most people don't know what to do in situations like that." "Well," she continued, her voice trembling slightly, "I wanted to let you know that a few of us, we recorded what happened. Not just the bad part, but the way you stood up for your daughter. It's powerful." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. He didn't want Elia to become the center of attention for something so painful. "I appreciate you telling me, but I'd prefer to keep this private. My daughter's been through enough." "I understand," Kelly replied. "But I think people need to see it, not to hurt her, but to inspire others. To show them how to stand up against hate. You might not realize it, but what you did today, it moved people. It changed how they see things." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. The weight of her words settled on him. He didn't know if he wanted their private pain to become public discourse, but he also understood the power of a story. "I'll think about it," he finally said, his voice measured. After hanging up, He sat in silence for a long time, his mind replaying the events of the day. He didn't want Aliyah to relive that moment, but Kelly's words had planted a seed in his mind. Could their story help others? The next day, Aliyah was back at the dining table, her crayons spread out like a rainbow. Marcus watched her from the kitchen, his heart heavy with both pride and worry. She was resilient, but he knew resilience came at a cost. "Sweetheart," he said, sitting beside her, "can we talk for a minute?" Aliyah looked up, her hands pausing mid-color. "Okay." "I got a call last night," he began, choosing his words carefully. "Someone from the park. They said people recorded what happened yesterday." Aliyah's eyes widened slightly. "They did?" Marcus nodded. "They think we should share it, to show people how to stand up to someone like that man." Aliyah's gaze dropped to her drawing. She was quiet for a moment, her small hands gripping the crayon tightly. "Do we have to?" "No," Marcus said quickly, placing a reassuring hand on hers. "We don't have to do anything you don't want to. But I wanted to talk to you about it. Because if we do share it, it might help other kids like you, kids who feel scared or alone." Aliyah's lips pressed into a thin line as she considered his words. Finally, she looked up at him, her eyes filled with determination. "If it helps someone, then I think we should do it." Marcus's chest swelled with pride. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "I'm not scared of him anymore, Daddy. And maybe if people see what happened, they won't be scared either." A week later, a video of the park confrontation began to circulate online. It wasn't just a story of hate. It was a story of strength, love, and the power of standing up for what's right. People around the world shared it, commenting on Marcus's courage and Aliyah's quiet bravery. Messages poured in from parents, children, and strangers who had been moved by their story. Some shared their own experiences with discrimination, while others vowed to speak up the next time they saw injustice. For Marcus and Aliyah, the response was overwhelming but heartening. It reminded them that even in the face of hate, there was always hope, always people willing to stand together against it. And in a small workshop across town, a stranger who had seen the video worked tirelessly to create something special. A new wheelchair for Aliyah, one that wasn't just functional but a work of art, a symbol of her strength and spirit. When it was delivered to their doorstep, Aliyah's eyes lit up. It was painted in a vibrant purple, just like her old one, but this one was adorned with intricate designs of butterflies and stars, with her name etched into the backrest. Marcus knelt beside her, his voice thick with emotion. "This is for you, sweetheart, because you are stronger than anyone I know." Aliyah ran her fingers over the designs, her smile brighter than ever. "Thank you, Daddy." As she wheeled herself around the living room, laughter filled the air, a sound that was stronger and louder than the silence of hate they had faced. Strength and unity. A few weeks had passed since the confrontation at the park, but the echoes of that day continued to ripple through the lives of Marcus, Aliyah, and even the community. The video of the incident had gained traction across social media platforms, drawing widespread attention. It wasn't just a story of a father protecting his daughter. It was a catalyst for conversations about discrimination, courage, and standing up for what was right. At first, Marcus was hesitant about the attention. His life with Aliyah had always been about quiet resilience, navigating challenges without seeking validation or recognition. But as the messages poured in, stories from parents with disabled children, individuals sharing their experiences of prejudice, and even people thanking him for inspiring them, he began to see the impact their story had created. One Saturday morning, as Marcus sipped his coffee at the kitchen table, Aliyah wheeled herself into the room. She wore her favorite bright yellow dress, the one she called her sunshine dress, and a matching scarf that fluttered slightly as she moved. Her new wheelchair glided smoothly over the floor, its intricate designs catching the sunlight streaming through the window. "Daddy," she began, her voice carrying a mix of excitement and nervousness. "Do you remember that lady, Kelly? The one who called you about the video. Marcus nodded, setting down his mug. Yes. Why? She emailed me, Aliyah said, holding up a printed letter. She asked if we could come to a community meeting. She says they want to do something special, something about helping kids like me. Marcus took the paper from her and scanned it. The letter explained that a group of community members, moved by their story, had come together to organize an event. It wasn't just about raising awareness. It was about taking action to create a more inclusive, supportive environment for children with disabilities. They're calling it the Stronger Together Initiative, Aliyah said, her eyes sparkling. They want us to be part of it. Marcus looked at her, his heart swelling with pride. She had grown so much in the weeks since the incident, her confidence blossoming, her voice steady and sure. Do you want to go? He asked. Aliyah nodded firmly. I do. The meeting was held at the local community center, a modest but welcoming space filled with rows of chairs and colorful banners. As Marcus and Aliyah entered, heads turned, and a warm wave of applause broke out. Aliyah blinked in surprise, her cheeks flushing, but she waved shyly, her small hand trembling slightly. Kelly, a petite woman with kind eyes and an infectious smile, greeted them at the door. Thank you so much for coming, she said, bending slightly to meet Aliyah's gaze. You've inspired so many people, sweetheart. This is all because of you. Aliyah smiled, her confidence growing with each kind word. It's not just me. It's my dad, too. He's the real hero. Kelly glanced at Marcus, who offered a modest smile and a nod. You're both heroes, Kelly said. And today, we're going to make sure your bravery leads to something bigger. Inside the hall, the event began with a short video presentation. Clips of Marcus and Aliyah's story were interwoven with messages from other families, educators, and advocates. One mother shared how her son, who used a wheelchair, had been inspired to stand up to bullies after watching the video. A teacher spoke about introducing new lessons on empathy and inclusion in her classroom. The audience listened intently, their faces reflecting a mix of emotions: sadness for the struggles shared, admiration for the courage displayed, and hope for the change being ignited. When it was their turn to speak, Marcus wheeled Aliyah to the stage. She hesitated for a moment, looking out at the sea of faces, but then she gripped the microphone with steady hands. Hi, she began, her voice clear but soft. My name is Aliyah. A few weeks ago, something really scary happened to me. A man at the park said mean things and broke my wheelchair. For a little while, I felt really small and really scared. Her voice wavered slightly, and Marcus stepped closer, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. Aliyah glanced up at him and smiled, drawing strength from his presence. But then, she continued, her voice gaining strength, my dad stood up for me. He showed me that even when people are mean, there's always someone who will protect you, someone who will stand by you. And because of him, I realized that I don't have to be afraid anymore. The room was silent, every eye fixed on the brave little girl. Aliyah's words hung in the air, resonating deeply. I want to tell other kids like me, she said, her gaze scanning the crowd, that you're not alone. You're strong, and there are people out there who will fight for you, just like my dad fights for me. The applause that followed was thunderous. Tears shimmered in the eyes of many audience members as they rose to their feet, clapping and cheering for Aliyah. Marcus stepped forward next, his deep voice filling the room. As parents, we all want to protect our children, but it's not just about protection. It's about empowerment. It's about teaching them that they have worth, that their voices matter, and it's about creating a world where they don't have to fight so hard just to exist. He paused, his eyes meeting those of the audience. What happened to my daughter that day should never have happened. But if we can use that experience to make sure it doesn't happen to someone else, to teach kindness, respect, and inclusion, then maybe we can turn something painful into something powerful. The event ended with a pledge, led by Kelly, to make the community more inclusive. Plans were announced for wheelchair-accessible play areas in local parks, anti-bullying campaigns in schools, and workshops on understanding disabilities. Marcus and Aliyah were at the heart of it all, their story a beacon of hope and a rallying cry for change. As they left the community center that evening, Aliyah looked up at her father, her face glowing with pride. "Daddy, do you think we really made a difference?" Marcus smiled, his heart swelling with love for his daughter. "I think you did, sweetheart, more than you'll ever know." And as they walked to their car, hand in hand, they knew that the strength they found in each other had grown into something much larger, a movement, a community, a promise of a better future. A community transformed. Weeks turned into months, and what had started as a single act of defiance against hate grew into a wave of change in the community. The Stronger Together initiative had gained momentum, inspiring not only local residents but also people from neighboring towns. The movement became a symbol of unity, proving that even a small story of courage could spark a revolution of kindness and inclusivity. For Marcus and Aliyah, life had changed in unexpected ways. Strangers would stop them on the street to thank them, their story a reminder that standing up for what's right could inspire others to do the same. Aliyah, once shy and hesitant to speak in front of others, had blossomed into a confident young girl who wasn't afraid to share her story. One Saturday morning, Marcus received a call from the mayor's office. The voice on the other end was warm and enthusiastic. "Mr. Walker, we'd like to invite you and Aliyah to a special event we're organizing at the park. It's a celebration of everything the community has accomplished through the Stronger Together initiative. We'd love for you both to be our guests of honor." Marcus hesitated. While he was proud of the changes that had come about, he'd never sought the spotlight. But as he glanced over at Aliyah, who was busy sketching butterflies on a piece of paper, he realized the importance of showing her how far their efforts had come. "We'd be honored," he replied, a smile tugging at his lips. The day of the event arrived, and the park was transformed into a vibrant hub of activity. Colorful banners adorned the entrance, each one bearing messages of inclusion and kindness. Booths lined the pathways, offering everything from information about accessible services to activities for children of all abilities. Volunteers wore T-shirts emblazoned with the words "Stronger Together," their smiles as bright as the sunny sky above. As Marcus and Aliyah approached, a cheer erupted from the crowd. Aliyah, dressed in her favorite purple sweater, beamed as she waved to the gathering. Her new wheelchair, now an extension of her personality with its intricate butterfly designs, glided smoothly over the freshly paved pathways. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice tinged with awe. "Look at all these people." Marcus nodded, his heart swelling with pride. "They're here because of you, Aliyah, because your bravery inspired them." They were greeted by Kelly, who had been instrumental in organizing the event. Her eyes sparkled with excitement as she hugged Aliyah. "You're a celebrity now," she joked, kneeling to meet the young girl's gaze. "This park, this event, none of it would have happened without you." Aliyah giggled, her shyness momentarily forgotten. "I didn't do it alone. Daddy helped." Kelly smiled, glancing at Marcus. "You're both incredible. And today, we're celebrating that." The event began with speeches from community leaders, each one highlighting the importance of inclusion and the progress they had made. The once overlooked park had been transformed into a space that welcomed everyone. New wheelchair-accessible play structures stood proudly alongside adaptive swings and sensory-friendly areas. The pathways, once uneven and narrow, were now smooth and wide, making it easy for everyone to navigate. Aliyah and Marcus were invited to the stage as the final speakers. Aliyah took a deep breath as Marcus wheeled her forward, her small hands gripping the microphone. The crowd fell silent, their attention fully on her. "Hi, everyone," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "A few months ago, something really scary happened to me in this park, but my daddy stood up for me, and because of him, and all of you, I don't feel scared anymore." She paused, her eyes scanning the crowd. This park used to feel like a place where I didn't belong. But now, it feels like it's for everyone. And that makes me really happy. So, thank you. Thank you for making it better, not just for me, but for every kid like me." The crowd erupted into applause, their cheers echoing through the park. Aliyah smiled, her cheeks flushed with pride, as Marcus stepped forward to add his own words. "Change doesn't happen overnight," Marcus said, his deep voice carrying easily over the crowd. "But it starts with moments like these, with people who care enough to make a difference. This park is a symbol of what we can achieve when we work together. And my hope is that this is just the beginning." He paused, his gaze softening as he looked at Aliyah. "Because every child deserves to feel like they belong. And every parent deserves to know their child is safe." After the speeches, the festivities began in earnest. Children of all abilities played together, their laughter filling the air. Marcus watched as Aliyah joined a group of kids at the new adaptive jungle gym, her wheelchair moving easily over the smooth surface. She laughed with them, her smile brighter than the sun. As Marcus stood by, Kelly approached him, holding a small plaque. "We wanted to give you this," she said, handing it to him. The plaque read, "In honor of Marcus and Aliyah Walker, for your courage, resilience, and unwavering commitment to building a stronger community. Stronger Together Initiative, January 2025." Marcus ran his fingers over the words, his throat tightening with emotion. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick. "This means more than I can say." "It's us who should be thanking you," Kelly replied. "You showed us what it means to stand up for what's right. This park is better because of you." As the sun dipped lower in the sky, painting the park in hues of orange and gold, Marcus and Aliyah sat together on a bench, watching the activity around them. Aliyah leaned her head against her father's arm, her eyes sparkling with contentment. "Daddy," she said softly, "I think this is my favorite day ever." Marcus chuckled, wrapping an arm around her. "It's a good one, isn't it?" She nodded. "Do you think that man from the park knows about all this? Do you think he knows we didn't let him win?" Marcus's expression grew thoughtful. "I don't know, sweetheart. But what matters is that we won, not just against him, but against the fear and hate he tried to spread. And that's a victory no one can take away." Aliyah smiled, her heart light. For the first time, the park didn't just feel like a place. It felt like home. The legacy of courage. Months passed, and the story of Marcus and Aliyah had become a local legend, a tale often told at community gatherings, in classrooms, and among families who sought to teach their children about courage and kindness. The Stronger Together initiative didn't just stop at transforming the park. It became the foundation for a movement that extended to schools, workplaces, and neighborhoods. For Marcus and Aliyah, life settled into a new normal. Aliyah had become a voice for children like her, a role she embraced with a quiet but fierce determination. Marcus, ever the protector, stood by her side, supporting her every step of the way. One sunny morning, Marcus and Aliyah returned to the park that had become a symbol of their journey. The once ordinary space was now filled with life and laughter. Families of all kinds gathered there, their differences celebrated rather than ignored. Aliyah rolled along the smooth pathways, her purple wheelchair gleaming under the sunlight, the intricate designs on its frame catching the eye of passersby. "Daddy," she said, looking up at Marcus, "can we stop by the butterfly garden?" The butterfly garden was a new addition to the park, inspired by the designs on Aliyah's wheelchair. It was a peaceful sanctuary filled with flowers, fluttering wings, and a plaque that bore her name. The Aliyah Walker Butterfly Garden, a place for all. Marcus smiled, nodding. "Of course, sweetheart." As they approached, a group of children was gathered near the garden's entrance. Among them was a boy in a wheelchair, his face lighting up as he saw Aliyah. He waved enthusiastically. "Hi, Aliyah." Aliyah beamed. "Hi, Toby." Toby had become one of her closest friends through the Stronger Together initiative. Like Aliyah, He had faced challenges and prejudice, but their friendship had given him a newfound sense of belonging. "Come see," Toby called, pointing toward the garden. "A butterfly landed on your flower." Aliyah wheeled closer, her heart swelling as she saw a vibrant monarch perched delicately on a sunflower. She reached out cautiously, her hand trembling slightly, and the butterfly fluttered its wings before taking flight. "It's beautiful," she whispered, her eyes following its graceful ascent. Marcus knelt beside her, his large hand resting gently on her shoulder. "Just like you," he said softly. As the day unfolded, Marcus found himself reflecting on how far they had come. The park was bustling with activity, a far cry from the tense, fear-filled atmosphere of that fateful day. Everywhere he looked, he saw the fruits of their courage. Children of all abilities playing together, parents connecting over shared experiences, and community members volunteering to keep the park a safe, welcoming space. Kelly approached them, her face lit up with excitement. "Marcus, Aliyah, I've been looking for you." "What's up, Kelly?" Marcus asked, standing to greet her. "I have some incredible news," she said, her eyes sparkling. "The City Council wants to expand the Stronger Together initiative to other neighborhoods. They've seen what's happened here, and they want to replicate it in parks, schools, and public spaces across the city." "That's amazing," Marcus said, his chest swelling with pride. "You've worked so hard to make this happen." "It's not just me," Kelly replied. "It's you. It's Aliyah. None of this would have started without your bravery." Aliyah looked up, her face bright with curiosity. "Does that mean more kids will have places to play?" "Exactly," Kelly said, kneeling to meet Aliyah's gaze. "And not just places to play, but places to feel safe and accepted." Aliyah's smile widened. "That makes me happy." As the day wound down, Marcus and Aliyah were approached by an older man who had been watching them from a distance. He wore a simple jacket and a weathered expression, his hands fidgeting nervously as he stepped closer. "Excuse me," the man said, his voice hesitant. "Are you Marcus Walker?" Marcus nodded, his brow furrowing slightly. "Yes, that's me." The man hesitated, glancing at Aliyah before meeting Marcus's gaze. I saw the video. The one from the park." Marcus tensed, unsure of where the conversation was heading, but the man quickly raised a hand, as if to reassure him. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry." The words hung in the air, unexpected and heavy with emotion. Marcus tilted his head, studying the man. "Sorry for what?" "For not stepping in that day," the man admitted, his voice trembling. "I was there. I saw what happened, and I didn't do anything. I was scared. But seeing what you and your daughter have done since then, I realize I can't let fear stop me anymore." Marcus's expression softened, his shoulders relaxing. "It's never too late to do the right thing," he said. "What matters is what you do now." The man nodded, his eyes glistening. "I've started volunteering at the community center, helping kids with disabilities. It's not much, but I wanted you to know that your actions inspired me." Marcus extended a hand, his voice warm. "That's more than enough. Thank you for sharing that." The man shook his hand firmly, a smile breaking through his weathered features. "No, thank you. Both of you." As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting golden light across the park, Marcus and Aliyah sat on a bench near the butterfly garden. Aliyah leaned her head against her father's arm, her eyes heavy with the contentment of a day well spent. "Daddy," she murmured, her voice soft, "do you think the world is getting better?" Marcus looked out at the park, at the laughter of children, the smiles of parents, and the determination of those working to create a better future. He thought of the man who had just approached them, of Kelly, of the city council's plans, and of his own daughter's unbreakable spirit. "I think it is," he said, wrapping an arm around her, "because of people like you." As the last rays of sunlight bathed the park in a warm glow, Marcus and Aliyah sat together, their hearts full of hope. They had faced darkness and fear, but they had emerged stronger, braver, and more determined than ever to leave the world a better place than they had found it. And in that moment, surrounded by the beauty of the park they had fought so hard to transform, they knew they had already begun. A future built on hope. As Marcus and Elia sat on the bench, watching the vibrant life around them, the sky began to shift into hues of purple and orange. The colors reminded Elia of the butterfly that had landed on her flower earlier, its delicate wings carrying a message of transformation. She turned to her father, her eyes shining. "Daddy," she said softly, "can we keep doing this? Helping other kids, I mean." Marcus smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Of course, sweetheart. We've come this far, and we're not stopping now." The commitment they shared wasn't just a passing moment. It was a promise to themselves and to each other. Marcus had always taught Elia that strength wasn't about physical power, but about resilience, compassion, and standing up for what was right. That belief had carried them through the hardest moments of their lives, and now served as the foundation for their future. As the weeks passed, Marcus and Elia became active voices in the city's efforts to expand the Stronger Together initiative. They attended meetings, spoke at schools, and collaborated with local organizations to ensure that inclusion and accessibility weren't just words but lived realities. One day, Marcus received an email from a national nonprofit organization dedicated to disability advocacy. They had heard about the work being done in their city and wanted Marcus and Elia to join a national campaign. The campaign aimed to inspire communities across the country to create inclusive spaces and empower children with disabilities. When Marcus shared the news with Elia, her face lit up. "Does this mean we'll get to help even more kids?" she asked, her excitement palpable. Marcus nodded. "It does, but only if you're ready for it." Elia's grin widened. "I'm ready, Daddy." The campaign took them to places they had never imagined. Elia spoke to children and adults alike, sharing her story with a mix of honesty and hope. Marcus watched her with pride, his heart swelling every time he saw her light up a room with her words. She was no longer the little girl who had been afraid to speak up. She was a force of nature, her voice carrying the power of resilience and change. One particularly memorable event was a conference where Elia was the keynote speaker. Standing on the stage in her purple wheelchair, she addressed an audience of hundreds. "When I was little," she began, "I used to think that being in a wheelchair meant I couldn't do things other kids could do. But then my daddy taught me something important, that my wheelchair isn't what defines me. It's my heart, my mind, and my spirit." She paused, her eyes scanning the crowd. "Sometimes people don't see that. They see the chair, or the color of my skin, or something else they think makes me different. But I've learned that being different isn't a bad thing. It's what makes us special. And when we stand together, those differences make us stronger." The applause that followed was thunderous, a standing ovation that brought tears to Marcus's eyes. Back in their hometown, the changes they had fought for continued to grow. The local government passed new regulations ensuring that public spaces were accessible to all. Schools implemented programs to teach empathy and understanding. And the park, once the site of so much pain, became a beacon of hope, a place where children like Elia and Toby could play freely, without fear or barriers. One evening, Marcus and Elia returned to the park for a quiet moment together. The air was cool, the stars beginning to peek through the twilight sky. Elia rolled over to the butterfly garden, her fingers brushing the petals of a vibrant sunflower. "Do you think the man from the park ever thinks about what he did?" she asked suddenly, her voice thoughtful. Marcus paused, considering her question. "Maybe," he said. "I'd like to think that he's learned something, that he's realized what he did was wrong." Elia nodded, her gaze fixed on the flowers. "I hope so. Because even if he was mean, I don't want him to be unhappy. I just want him to know that what he did hurt, but it didn't break us." Marcus smiled, his heart swelling with pride. "You're an amazing person, Elia. You have more kindness and strength in you than most people will ever know." Elia turned to him, her eyes shining with determination. "I learned it from you, Daddy." As they sat together under the stars, the park around them alive with laughter and joy, Marcus realized something profound. Their journey wasn't just about overcoming a single moment of hate. It was about building a legacy of love, resilience, and unity. And in that moment, surrounded by the beauty they had helped create, he knew they had succeeded. The man from the park might never truly understand the impact of his actions, but it didn't matter. Marcus and Elia had turned that pain into something beautiful, something lasting. And as the butterfly garden swayed gently in the evening breeze, it stood as a testament to the power of hope and the strength of the human spirit. They had faced darkness and found light, and together they had built a future where every child could feel seen, valued, and loved.